And away we go. Dan Strafford stepping up to the dish for day number 2 of the Major League Baseball season. Pleasure to be back with you as we walk through DraftKings DFS slate for Friday evening. You see I have up on the screen, if you're listening on the podcast side, it's the $18 bat flip. So as always, reminder to anyone starting out in DFS or those who have not played as long, check your contest, check the payout structure, check what you're playing. A lot of these are lottery tickets for me. I'll play 2 or 3 lineups for the fun of it, for roster construction. Obviously, if you're someone who's multi-entering, you're max entering, whatever it is, that's a different ball game of really playing the numbers and playing the odds of ownership and trying to drive outcomes in a way. There are plenty of products out there using simulations these days. Obviously, Moonshots DFS, Moonshots MLB, where I get my data from, has a ton of content and a ton of data as well. Hand builders, folks who are just in it for the fun of it, more my style. I do try to break down some of the stats of everything, but if you're multi-entering, there are plenty of options with the data on Moonshots and using an optimizer like on Moonshots Available or going to a third party with your own output and your own sorting of your projections. So all of that's to say that I'll walk through this slate quickly here, about 20 minutes, go through the matchups. I will use Fantasy Labs, which is a site that's been around for a while. Don't really use them for much other than their Vegas odds, and I just like the UI and the color pattern here to keep it easy and simple and straightforward. So we do miss out on Rockies Tampa Bay first game at George M. Steinbrenner Field for the Tampa Bay Rays. Kyle Freeland on the mound, assumed to see some righty home runs, whether the park allows it or not. But we start with a matchup between, let's click through here, Orioles and Blue Jays, Rogers Center. Obviously, that's a dome stadium. You have Charlie Morton against Kevin Gausman. The Orioles lineup, 22.2% K percentage against righties. For the Blue Jays lineup, just 15 point. That's crazy. 15.1% against righties against Charlie Morton's handedness. Great numbers here for the Blue Jays. From a K percentage, walk percentage is low still though. Your WOBA, your ISO are all middling for the Blue Jays. On the other side, for the Orioles, 22.2% K percentage, as I said, 178 ISO. So let's take a quick look at our projected lineups here. So for Gausman, you get Kauser, Rochman, Westberg, O'Hearn. Such an young start to that lineup there, but tons of upside. Price points are all relatively in line for Kauser, Rauchman, and Westberg. O'Hearn, O'Neill, Mountcastle, Cedric Mullins, Urias, and Jackson Holiday. Against lefties, Gausman at 152 ISO, 20.3 K WOBA, expected WOBA of 331. Righties a little bit better from a power and expected WOBA perspective, but obviously a higher K percentage. I'm probably going to end up with a little bit of Holiday, Kauser, Rauchman as a stack here, just to get a little different. We'll take a look at projections momentarily for this game. On the other side, you have the Blue Jays with Bichette, Guerrero, Santander, Andres Jimenez, Alejandro Kirk, Springer, Wagner, Clement, and Rodin as our projected lineup on Moonshots DFS. ISO for righties against Charlie Morton in 2024 up at 206. So you can make a case for Vladdy Guerrero in this lineup as a one-off, looking for power. His K percentage is way low. We know what Guerrero can do. Let's take a quick look at projections and see if he is on our daily launch menu. There he is at 0.26 expected home run, plus 650 on DraftKings Sportsbook. I think that is an impressive number. If that's true, I'm gonna have to look at the sportsbook on my mobile device here, on my cell phone. as that's a pretty tantalizing number for a single home run from Vlad Guerrero in this matchup. Stacks from this game. Let's see here. Orioles, expected home run 1.72. Expected ownership as of right now, 6.7%. Total, let's see, average points 8.45. Middle of the pack, Blue Jays just above at 8.82. Expected home runs 163. So both these, I think this is going to be a viable game to pick from. May not have a ton of it, but I think we'll get there. So continuing on, Pirates Marlins, we have Connor Giuseppe against Mitch Keller. Keller is grading out projections wise as top of the bill here, 7,900. Expected 2.34 DK points per dollar, ownership of 16%, which seems pretty low for the projection he's getting as you think of the data of it all. But you see Keller checks in right here, middle of the pack, $7,900. Matchup with the Marlins. We know this Marlins lineup is not good. But versus lefties, Keller struggled with the power. We know that. Against righties, he struggled with the strikeouts. But this lineup overall, switching over to Fangraphs, active roster for Miami. It's not popping off the page at me. 22% K percentage. That's overall. Going back to our matchups, Marlins are at 21.7%, so consistent numbers there. ISO way low, 127. So Keller makes a ton of sense. I might think Keller's a little bit more of a cash game option. If we look at our Whiffers row, Mitch Keller listed out at 6.7 expected Ks on moonshots. Let me just check numbers here from spring training. Keller has been shaky this spring, maintained a 4 to 5. Yeah, I get it. I get why against the Marlins, but I'm going to stay away from Keller as far as a starting pitcher for my GPP lineups here. I just don't think. Trying to check back on ownership. Not a ton of great options ownership-wise. These projection numbers look pretty darn high. No, I see who I'm going to get to. I see what's going to happen. But we'll get to that in a little bit. I have no interest in Connor Giuseppe. I think Pirates one-offs are fine. O'Neal Cruz, more than viable as a lefty power bat. And I'm a big, as I said in yesterday's episode, I'm a big Joey Bart fan, so I'll be on that whenever I can. Price point seems reasonable at 3,400. Red Sox at Rangers. Jack Leiter against Tanner Houck. Tanner Houck. Houck's ISO numbers are great. K percentage is there. Keeps the walks low. Jack Leiter. Talent's there. We don't know if the actual skill set will be there for these games. Checking in on Leiter's spring. Hit by the top of the head by a fly ball during batting practice. That seems poor, but the walks are up. You know, that's just always my fear, and especially a lineup like the Boston Red Sox with Devers and Casas. This looks like a bad spot for Jack Leiter. I haven't been checking our run totals here. 4.5 for the Blue Jays, 4.1 for the Orioles, 4.1 for Pirates, 3.6. You have 4.5 for the Red Sox, 4.2 for the Texas Rangers. So I will stay away from Leiter. I'm going to have to pick some pitchers. Tanner Houck, price point of 7,700, projections-wise, 15.39, 13.5% K percentage. All seems reasonable enough. Not exactly what I want from an upside perspective or an ownership perspective. So, Mets Astros, I have a feeling I'm going to be rostering Tyler McGill. It's going to be bad. But Astros don't strike out. They walk. But McGill's that sort of tantalizing stuff guy for so long, and I use that term somewhat incredulously, but he's had a very good spring. Obviously, injuries have gotten him into the rotation, or at least was much quicker to get into the conversation for the season. Last year, 98 in more than a strikeout per inning. I'm going to have Tyler Megill. It's going to happen. It's going to be at $6K flat, a price point that at least one. I'll probably play 3 lineups. I played 2 lineups yesterday. Probably play 3 lineups. I assume at least one of them will have Megill. Not well projected at 11.72. Ownership at 3.1%. Has some upside for me. On the other side of the ledger, Hunter Brown for the Houston Astros. Very good Mets lineup. You probably have Brett Beatty in there instead of Acuna, as there's a righty on the mound for this one. Plenty of bats you can use. They're just so damn expensive for Lindor, Soto. Alonso's at 49. Nimmo, batting cleanup at 4K. He walks a ton, sees a lot of pitches. ISO at 185 against righties. Brown doesn't give up a ton of power. 129 ISO for lefties on the past year's data track. So Hunter Brown seems more than reasonable, but 24.6% ownership currently projected on DraftKings. Bats-wise, again, if you want to talk about some of these Astros who I didn't touch on, Yordan Alvarez is fine. But again, 5,700. Like, you're going to have to find cheap value somewhere bats-wise. That's why I go back to something like the Orioles as I scroll up here on the video, and you can't see that on the podcast. Someone like Jackson Holliday at 3,700 with Kowser at 4,400. That's a combination I like. Cedric Mullins as a potential upside bat. Batting 7th, don't love it. But you could find some pieces in that Orioles lineup that save you some dollars to get up to someone like a Yordan Alvarez at 5,700. Cubs at Diamondbacks, checking quickly with Vegas. Houston at 4.7 for the Mets. Cubs and Diamondbacks, 4.6 for the Diamondbacks, 4.1 expected runs for the Chicago Cubs. So this is Merrill Kelly versus Jamison Taillon. I have Merrill Kelly in 2 of my 4 season-long drafts just because of the price point, but I don't know that Merrill Kelly has much left. I know the Diamondbacks are hoping he gets back to it. He gives up power. He's been injured. 11 home runs across, 60 innings last year. Projected at 12.65 at 7,300. Obviously, I'd rather go to Houck at 7,700 as my sort of price point. I have a feeling, as it shows here, Luis Castillo is going to be who is most highly owned. Going back again, we get ISO is fine. Expected WOBA for lefties, not great. So Kyle Tucker, Michael Busch batting 4th is a nice upside. Pete Crow Armstrong. So some one-offs from the Cubs. Taillon on the other side of this matchup, 17.9. Didn't strike out a ton of people last year. Didn't walk a ton either. Didn't give up a ton of power. This Diamondbacks lineup is projected at what? 4.6 runs. Projections-wise, let's check out the stacks. Diamondbacks are 5th overall. Ownership percentage, 8%. See, the Cubs here are 4th on the projections from Moonshots DFS, or MLB. I keep doing that. MoonshotsMLB.com. Cubs at 5%. Diamondbacks at 8%. There are some pieces in this game that I think will be in the winning lineup. This game in Arizona, weather looks nice. Wind blowing out to right at 12 miles an hour. Again, this is a projection for later in the day. Weather can change, but I like this game a lot as I look at it. So there will be a decent amount of bats for me. And then you talk about a guy like Pavin Smith. You have Jake McCarthy at 2,500. So these are the pieces that may come to build with the Yordan Alvarez's or the Luis Castillos of the world. You have Smith, McCarthy, Perdomo, and Ketel Marte. Obviously, you'd want Carroll if you do a 5-man 7-2, which is sort of my illness at this point, as I described yesterday. I think that's more than viable. And I use the word viable way too often when talking about sports. But let's see. We have 3 more games. Haven't given you a ton of breaking news information here. Projections are pretty straightforward. Diamondbacks, 18.3% K percentage. Cubs at 22.9. If we're looking for the Mackenzie Gore of today's slate, which God bless Mackenzie Gore, maybe Kelly has a little bit of an upside here. I don't see it. I don't like it. But I if we're trying to find pieces that aren't heavily owned, Merrill Kelly, 4.9%. So I guess so far, if I'm talking about pitchers I may use, it would be Tanner Houck, Merrill Kelly, and Tyler Megill are sort of my pool as of right now. It's disgusting. I don't like it, but that's where I'm sort of gravitating towards as I work my way through these games. Athletics at Mariners. This is where Castillo is. Jeffrey Springs on the other side. And not a ton of data points on Springs. So take this all with a grain of salt when you come to try to project what we can get from him. Price point of $7,500. Full healthy offseason. There's Tommy John. He came back. They're looking for 30-plus starts from him. Let's see, projections. Springs. I'm sure it's tough for projections to have any sort of real work here with Springs only with a small sample last year coming back from a injury from Tommy John surgery. But if we look at the lineup, Springs, you got Robles leading off. Julio Rodriguez is always going to be a play. Cal Raleigh. Rosareno. The middle of this lineup is great. I'll probably, again, talking about what I might have in an optimizer if I was playing multi-entry or more than 5 lineups. This 2, 3, 4, 5, or even mixing and matching 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, all pieces that I would want against Springs. I don't want any of the Athletics. Castillo's more than good. 8,300, expected points of 16.59. Is that right? Yeah. Ownership's going to be a problem. Playing cash games, Castillo's probably at least your SP1, and then you're mixing and matching on SP2, depending on what sort of lineup you're building out, offensive players-wise. But there it is. It's Castillo. It's Houck. It is Merrill Kelly, easy for me to say, and Tyler Megill thus far for me. Don't feel great saying that, but here we are. Braves and Padres. Here's another pitcher, Dylan Cease, who... I don't know what to make of Reynaldo Lopez. His velocity's down. Arm fatigue. It doesn't look great. Last year was good. 25 starts. Crazy to only see 4-2, but whip was fine. ERA was great. Oh, duh. 8-5, not 4-2. It's always good to be caught while recording and not being able to read properly. But nonetheless, Lopez is fine. Projections like him. 16.52. Padres lineup is obviously very good. They don't strike out a ton. They don't walk a ton either. This is probably where the rubber meets the road for the slate for Lopez. And here's the thing. So if Moonshots is projecting here and they're projecting 4.1% DK ownership, then I'll have to consider Lopez a little bit more highly than I did previously. It's a slate changer. If he's at 16.52 and Cease is at 16.76 as projected DK points, And one, there's a difference in $1,500, but also a difference in 18% of ownership. Same matchup. Not going to get a lot of lineups with two pitchers from the same game often. Lopez checks in, then checks some boxes for me. If I'm trying to balance out my lineups, I probably will then mix and match with some power from the other side in a different lineup with Tatis or Merrill, Jake Cronenworth, and Machado as pieces that I might build around. I'm not going against Cease. I think this is a fine Braves lineup, obviously without Ronald Acuna Jr. still. Mentioned that yesterday. But I have no desire to pick any of the Braves against Dylan Cease. Final game on this slate. Checking Vegas real quick. 3.4 and 3.7, so more of a pitcher's game. Dodgers and Tigers, 4.5. Jack Flaherty gets the start against the Dodgers after re-signing with the Detroit Tigers. Gets the second start of the season behind Skubal. And this is obviously going to be a bad matchup for him. He has good numbers against lefties and righties. Lefties don't hit for power off of them. Righties do. Not so much, but I still don't know. Is Mookie Betts healthy? He'll be able to play in the Dodgers home opener Thursday. So he played yesterday. Betts missed the Dodgers. I keep seeing people saying it's all because of raw milk. I'm very intrigued to see what the illness was with some of these guys. But nonetheless, obviously this is the Dodgers lineup. I'm not going to go against often. Not a ton of strikeouts. If you want to look at Hernandez and Muncy at 29 and 26% K percentage against righties respectively, that's fine. Conforto's up a little bit. Again, if we talk ownership, 3.3%. If I'm building a ton of lineups, obviously you're going to have exposure to Jack Flaherty. You're going to have the K upside. You're going to have the opportunity for strikeouts, 7 strikeouts across 5 2/3. The outcomes here probably lean towards the Dodgers getting to him. We saw the Vegas total 4.5. On the other side, Yamamoto, 9,000. Fine. I'm not against that. I assume projections have him fairly highly owned, 24.2%. So Yamamoto's fine. So you have a mix of Yamamoto, Cease, Castillo, Lopez, Houck, Merrill, Kelly, and Tyler Megill. That's a big mix of pitchers. I'm going to have to whittle that down as I do my lineups during the day. It really is going to come down to the stacks that I really prefer. Projected stacks, Dodgers at the top, then Astros, Red Sox, Cubs, Diamondbacks as of right now. This is all off of projected lineups. I do like the Orioles. I do like piecing together some of these Oriole bats and getting a little, sorry, on this side as I'm pointing on my screen if you're listening on the podcast version, but doing, Holiday, Kauser, Rauchman as a three-man, and then talking about Yordan Alvarez as a one-off. I think that's where I land. One-offs potentially from the Padres. Oh, and the Mariners. So Mariners, Orioles, one-offs from the Padres. Yordan Alvarez as a one-off from the Astros-Mets game if I'm not playing Tyler Megill on the other side. And that's pretty much where I'm landing. So hopefully this is helpful. Let me know in the comments on YouTube. Send me a message. I'm on Blue Sky these days, no longer on X/Twitter. You can find me in Discord for Moonshots MLB as well if you want to tag me there. But hopefully it's helpful. If it's not, so be it. I will do better in the future. Really taking this as a fun way for me to look at the slate, walk through it, look at what the stats are saying on Moonshots, and then also just what sort of the old gut sees at first from the projected lineups and saying where I may be going. If we want to do Mike may kill me over time for doing this, but if I do just a quick generate lineups, I assume it's going to be a lot of Dodgers. Yeah. But see, there's Pavin Smith. So those Diamondbacks that I was talking about before, the lefty power bats for the Diamondbacks with Carroll. So that was the other team. So yeah, Diamondbacks, Orioles. Yeah. All right. So there you have it. The first optimized run that I just ran. It has Keller and Yamamoto. Not a fan of Mitch Keller today. I know Moonshots is projecting him well, but I will stay away from that one. With that said, appreciate everyone listening. Like, comment, subscribe, all those things you hear over and over and over again from every other content creator. And probably won't do anything over the weekend just because of my schedule. But hopefully we'll see you back on Monday for more of The Dish, talking MLB DFS. Thanks so much for listening.